Hello, Clayton Vance here. Welcome to this conversation we're having today with Marianne Brown, Interior Designer Extraordinaire. We are at her house, and I was the architect. She selected me to be the architect for her house, and that was a privilege. This was a few years back, and they had a fun time building it over the last little while, a year and a few months. So we're just having a conversation about her process, my process, and the collaboration between the two, and what you as a homeowner or someone looking to hire one of us or other interior designers and architects, what you can expect.
Yeah.
So let's get into this conversation. So as we get started, let's just, Marianne has some questions for me and I've got some questions for her, and let's just have a conversation.
Do you know what your questions are?
One of them will be about authenticity, which is the word I used. However, you used a different word, which I thought was very appropriate.
Integrity?
Integrity.
I use integrity. Let's talk about integrity.
Okay, let's start the conversation about design integrity. How would you define it, and why is it important for owners?
Well, yeah, so we were talking about different styles, and whether Clayton was asking me, well, I have a bunch of projects that are kind of more of a farmhouse or maybe a little bit more modern. Do you do that? And that's how this came up.
Yeah.
I feel like I can do any style as long as it has integrity. So sometimes I feel like I get asked to do a certain style that really, for integrity, it means like it's rooted maybe in history. There's, our tagline type of thing for our business is thoughtful design. What's the thought behind this? Where is it coming from? Why are we using it? Why does it make sense here? What draws you to it? What are the elements of this particular design that you are liking? And if the answer is that my neighbor did it, or I saw it on Pinterest, is fine because it's speaking to you. But what parts of it is speaking to you? So I'm trying to get to the root of it. So I can do mid-century modern. I can do super, like a Swedish modern. I can do uber traditional. We can have swag on all the windows if we want. I can do that. I just need to understand
its roots.
The roots, the thought behind it. What are we going for? Does that make sense? There needs to be an integrity to it, so it doesn't feel like, why? You go into a home and it's like, why is this here? So really we can do any design style as long as we understand the meaning behind it, where it's coming from. That's kind of the integrity. It needs to make sense and be rooted in something beyond just trends.
Yeah, trend.
Yeah.
What are the issues with trends?
My issue with trends, well, Nate Burgess actually said it really well. He said trends are created by marketers and people selling things to make you feel like you have to buy something new.
There you go.
There you go. Stop listening to trends. You're just being manipulated by marketing people. Our homes are the most personal thing to us. That is not where a trend should matter. Like, sure, you put on your trendy clothes to leave the house because you are being judged. You come home and you get in your sweats for a reason. Right? Because that's where trends die. They die at your door. This is your home, and I want it to be what you love. I mean, you can use trends to educate you, to see like, what am I liking, what am I not liking? But the point is to reflect you and how you live and what you love and your history. Are you Scandinavian? Let's bring that into the house. Are you,
Okay, this is why I love talking to you, is because you're talking real people's language, whereas the stuff I use, the way I describe it is architecture is a symbolic representation of a person's values or the family's values.
Yeah.
And that can just get a little bit too like
woo-woo.
Well, yeah. Well, what do you mean by that? Well, are we going to be putting symbols and like squares and circles and things? Or are we carving lions to put somewhere? And the family crest. But it's absolutely true. And essentially what you're doing is boiling down the same thought into something that's just don't follow trend, be you. And what does that? And then comes back to this integrity thought of being authentic, and being authentic to you, and figuring out what it is that you like. And it's interesting because for those who are well traveled and seasoned travelers and stuff, you'll notice that there's certain places that resonate.
Mm-hmm.
And as you resonate, one of the things that I have an issue with is contextualism, and people say, well, that doesn't belong there, that doesn't belong there. And I get into a discussion point. It's like, yeah, well, you know, it's really up to you, in my personal opinion, because when I look at some of the greatest cities, especially the cosmopolitan ones like Venice and other things, you'll have East and West joining, and you'll have these fascinating architectural styles that began to merge. And so where something belongs or doesn't belong is like, well, give me some sort of authentic, integrity filled reasoning for why we should do it. And let's look at the proportions, the geometries, and how these things come together, and let's do it.
Yes.
And just because your neighbor's doing a 5-bay colonial does not prevent you from doing a 5-bay colonial.
Sure.
They can go right next to each other, and it's those details that really reflect you within the overall design that will make each of those things unique.
Yeah. And that's what I love about Utah, honestly. It all works here. Like, you know, you go to Phoenix and it's all pretty much one style. And that's tough, right? Like, you don't want to be the colonial in Phoenix in a sea of whatever, of Mediterranean, whatever, I don't know. Spanish, American, I don't even know what it is. Anyway, we love Phoenix.
Some version of it.
But I love Utah for that reason. Kind of everything goes, but also that can be a bad thing.
Yeah. It absolutely can be a bad thing.
We have to watch it.
Yeah, and so one of my favorite streets, you tell me what one of your favorite streets are. One of mine is South Temple, and one of the things I love about South Temple is that you have virtually every style on South Temple in terms of homes. But all of them are composed so well and so beautifully and so authentically, full of integrity, that as you're walking down, it's just this new visual experience with every single house. You're like, wow, that's awesome. Wow, that's awesome. And so there's nothing wrong with having a multiplicity of styles as long as they're all speaking the same general language of either tradition. Even some modern houses can be timeless and can fit within that same context. But
for sure. And really, like, so Federal Heights, I love Federal Heights. I love the avenues. Mill Creek Way has some beautiful things. Now Haven is new construction, but beautiful new construction. So there's definitely some, like, Holiday and other areas have really great things. But all of the streets that speak to me, the thing that they all have is the homes were built by architects.
Yeah.
Let's be honest, it's not by a builder. Builder-driven design.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I love builders, but builders and architects and designers are the best marriage possible.
Yeah.
We should all work together if we can. I know budgets really eliminate that, and we do what we can, but there's a reason why no one gets excited about Rambler Lane of a builder, like the tri-multi builder. Yeah. It just, because that's when they abandoned architects. They said, we don't want to pay for them. We don't, or let's have them drop one thing. I mean, Sugar House was done by Sears catalog houses, like, you know, but it's still, an architect drew those up. Did they mass produce architectural drawn homes? Yeah. Yes, but that works. I would rather, you know what I mean? I don't mind if there's 20 of the same home that an architect drew.
Yeah.
Better than, to get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I know exactly what you're saying, and that has a lot to do with scale. It has to do with the details, simple massing, simple forms. But what's interesting with almost all of those old historic Sears catalog houses, when you look at the doors, all the doors are different, or how they actually did the columns are all slightly different. Capitals on columns are slightly different.
Yes,
and so you have all of the variety of detail happens not in the overall mass of the house. Where it's like, oh, we need 5 more gables, or we need 3 more materials on this facade. It's like, no, the details. And that's where craftsmen shine.
Yes.
And for anyone out there who is even thinking about or has a skill in a trade, just so you know, you can probably make a lot more money in today's world because the generation of true craftsmen is actually dying out there, and they're retiring, and there's an opening for really skilled tradesmen, craftsmen who want to learn awesome trades, and we need them desperately.
Yes.
So do not be afraid of pursuing a future in the trades. There's a demand for it, and there will be a demand for it.
Yes.
And so, details.
That's why you hire us.
How do you see your role as it relates to the architect's role?
Well, first, I think anytime I work with anyone, I want to respect their knowledge, what they're bringing. So when I work with an architect, I definitely am going to defer to you for, like, we're going to collaborate, but I understand that you have an understanding that I don't on certain things, and hopefully on the flip side, right?
It's absolutely true.
So it's collaborative. I know that, you know, it's a tricky balance because we do overlap a little bit, right? We both have vision.
Yeah.
We both, but I really think that the back and forth on ideas in a respectful way is what makes great design.
Yeah.
So I love collaborating. If architects are open, which you were, and I think that's why this turned out beautifully, I think anybody that you're working with, if you are open to what the collaboration can bring, it goes really well.
Yeah, and so that's interesting because that just goes back to virtually all relationships, and it's a relational thing that you're trying to set up. And so if you have very clearly defined objectives and clearly defined goals that you're trying to achieve in terms of the ends of the house, the end result of what you're trying to achieve with this particular thing, and then everyone just throws their input the best of their ability until you sort through enough options that you collectively end on the ideal result.
Yes, exactly. But like, hey, I'm going to ask you, what do you think here? You know, like, here's my idea. Does this make sense?
Yeah.
So it's a back and forth, and then hopefully too, you're like, okay, this is the structure, and I go, okay, well, but the furniture and how they want to live, does this really work best? Like, so we go back and forth.
Excuse me.
Right?
Yeah. This is an interesting question because when I'm looking at the house, I'm looking primarily outside in, but also interior experiences. And when you look at a thing, how do you look at it? Do you look inside out? Do you look at furniture layout first? When your brain sees something,
I'm layout
first?
At least for me, I'm only speaking for myself. I am very layout based. Like, how are they living? How is it flowing? Like the size and the scale of the spaces.
So at what point of the design process are you now thinking in terms of the materiality and of the furniture and the fireplaces and all that type of stuff?
It's kind of like the concept. So when we're talking about like someone, it's when they're describing what they want to build. Like, let's say they're like if we were describing this house, I'd be like, okay, my family grew up, my mom's from DC, John and I love that kind of a look. We like the East Coast, whatever. So I'm starting to see all, like, it's instantly happening.
Okay.
Like it's all layering. It's like, okay, yeah, I'm going to do like a colonial, and then, like some herringbone floors or some like medium brown. Like, it just happens. One thing after another. I'm seeing the moldings. I'm seeing like, okay, and I would love to do some more modern furniture, and but I have it's like an idea. It's an overall thing. Like, if you can say this person loves this, and they like this kind of architecture and this is how they live, it, like, I don't know. It comes together.
It's for me. It's sometimes during the design process, like our first site visit is I'm there with the client. Sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes as we're going through the different programmatic elements they want, and I need this and I need that, and we want this here. And as we're looking at the views and how it all fits together, sometimes the house will just descend.
It does.
And it's the weirdest thing. And you're like, okay, I see it.
Yep.
And I just need to go draw this thing up, and it works. And the other times, there's enough complexity to it. You have to just force some things.
Sure. That definitely happens.
It's really interesting.
And I'm thinking about, like, okay, they walk into their bedroom. This is where they're like laying down. What are they looking at? What's next to them? Do they have a lot of books? How big does the table need to be? Do we do a sconce there because there's books on the thing and we don't want a lamp to take up the space, and then we can have and then we want curtains, and they sleep in, and okay, we're gonna need lots of curtains, but we want window, all of them.
And the crazy thing is, what our job is for you guys, why you hire us, is to help answer all of these questions and all the questions you did not even think about, right? And so we're solving all of the things you didn't know you were supposed to ask. So I look at me as I'm creating the framework of the socialization of the household.
Yes.
And how I generate these spaces will begin to affect family culture.
Yes. And
Go.
As we're talking, this is something that's definitely coming to my mind. People need to know who they are before they build a house. For it to turn out well.
Yeah.
And I understand that's a big ask, But I think when people say, like, is there anything that happened with your house you didn't love? And I'm like, no, I really, like, there's not a space I don't love. There's nothing, because I knew what I wanted. I know who I am.
Yeah.
I know how many kids I have. Like, when I built my house, I had a good understanding, and I pay attention to how we live and what works best. I'm thoughtful about how things function. So it wasn't hard.
Yeah.
But I understand why it's hard for people. They're not thinking that realm. They're a doctor, and their wife has, is doing another job, but they have 2 jobs and they have 3 kids and whatever. Like, everyone has these different, and they're in that realm of, I'm an accountant and my husband's a doctor and my kids are whatever. And they're not thinking it. Like, this is what I do.
Yeah.
This is what you do. But let me help you think. I'll help you think through it, and I will help you figure out who you are. But we need to be open and honest, and it's that process that's tricky.
Yeah, integrity. It goes back to that idea of integrity, because integrity is kind of the idea of wholeness, right? And so it's consistent throughout.
Yes.
And if we know who we are, we'll have that integrity that we can bring to the other things that we do. And so another question that I have that I always find interesting is, how do you put yourself into a frame of reference where you can still be an interior designer for someone that's a generation older than you, or your grandparents' age, or whatever.
Yes.
So what sort of experiences in life inform how you make decisions?
Yeah.
And how do you get into that mindset?
Well, and I think that's why what I love about our industry is that experience does matter. Like, it's, I think in other things like fresh young talent or whatever, that's not a thing. I probably will have my best business at 70. I won't age out. It actually, you do better. Like you said, I'll get grayer and I'll be charging more. And because the experience of understanding how every phase of life goes matters, right?
Yeah.
But I do feel like I've always been an old soul. So, like, just speaking for myself, I really feel like I'm good at understanding different phases of life, even if I'm not in them or haven't experienced them yet, because I pay attention. When people talk, I actually listen.
Yeah.
And, like, I think about what it's like to be 70, and I think what it's like to be 20. And, like, I really do that does matter to me. People are interesting to me. I love people. That's why I do interior design. So when there's someone who's older and they're like, listen, I don't care about the trends, or I grew up during this time and this speaks to me, I'm like, 100%. I understand that. You know what I mean? Like, to understand where they're coming from, how they entertaining changes 100% when you're an empty nester.
Yeah.
Your kids get married, that kind of a thing. I understand there needs to be a different flow and a different function, and we can do that. I really think ideally people would have 4 different houses for 4 different phases of life.
Yeah,
right?
my wife and I talk about it all the time. It's like, here's your first married house, here's your young kid's house, here's your teenage house, here's your empty nester house.
But I also don't like waste.
No.
So I want you to enjoy the home you have forever.
Yes. And so how do you design a house in a manner that actually takes care of all 4 phases of life, all within a single house?
Yes.
That is the great challenge.
Oh, for sure. And I tell my clients, what do you think you're going to like at 60? What do you think you're going to like? Like, I want this to last. I do not want you to be tearing out everything. So imagine not caring about, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah. So
perspective.
So take us back to trends. And
Exactly.
In the context of that thought.
And the context of I'm going to come, like, my black window thing, dark windows, fine, great. They make sense in certain homes, not all the homes. That is a trend that is so expensive and so permanent. And I want people to think when I'm 60 or 70 or however old they, my furniture is going to change. My taste is going to get a little different. Will I still like this?
The windows.
Kind of, I don't know, drastic window. I don't know if you will. And to replace an entire home of windows is not easy or cheap.
Yeah.
So I do try to go, like, just really think, like, when you were a kid, what'd you love? When you were 20, what'd you love? How old you are building this house or remodeling or whatever. Maybe you're 40, 50. Now what do you love? Like, what has been consistent, though? I consistently am drawn towards this. I'm trying to find a pattern with people.
Yeah.
And maybe the consistency that they want is that they don't want anything to do with their past and they're doing something new.
Yeah.
That's fine. I'm totally fine with, like, let's do that. Maybe the integrity is like, I don't care about integrity. I'm living in this house for 10 years, then I'm going to sell it, and we're going to build our dream house 10 years from now. That's fine, too.
Yeah.
There's an integrity to that because we know the purpose. So anyway, I don't know if that answers your question.
No, that's good.
You get what I'm saying.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. That's good. It's interesting because designers generally have exactly what you said, a very definitive understanding of who they are and what they want. And the clearer that objective is, the easier it is for me to produce your vision.
Okay.
And so it was, I thought it was fun to work with you. It was fantastic.
Yeah, it was
and I think, I mean, our default styles of what's just in us, I think it jived really well, and that I think that's really important for interior designers. Tell me if I'm wrong, but if you're a client, you're looking for an interior designer, making sure that person really connects with you.
Yes.
And your style, your style,
Yeah.
and who you are.
Yeah. Yes.
Because if they don't, they're just gonna, and that's goes for me too. And sometimes I cannot deliver what a client wants, and then I let them go. But the connection we had in terms of the end goal was great.
Yeah.
And so it was pretty easy.
Okay.
And really fun.
Yeah.
You did a great job.
But when you work with designers, is that tricky because you do have a vision? Like,
yeah, the
when
designers
come in, do you feel like it kind of junks it up a little bit
not
sometimes?
necessarily,
Or,
not necessarily. And I mean, some input for all you designers out there too. From an architect's perspective, just everyone needs to make sure they understand each other's roles.
Yeah.
And if you don't understand the narrative, the original narrative and goals of why we got here, don't try to change that without understanding it.
Yeah.
And so understanding where one, and sometimes it's really this blurry area where my role ends and your role begins. But working with designers is always very, very helpful. They'll have, and as long as everyone's mature about things and don't get offended, and that's the most important thing. You can tell me my designs are terrible. That's what architecture school does for you, by the way, is you have 3 years of just being slammed with how horrible your designs are at architectural reviews and critiques, and so you develop some pretty thick skin throughout that process and realize, yeah, it doesn't matter because what we're trying to do is just produce a better idea. And so as long as everyone can be on the same page and not being offended or get too or have too much ownership on any one thing.
Yeah.
And you can be able to let some things go. Then you get somewhere. However, if you're doing design by committee and you don't commit all the way to a particular thing, you'll end up with a very subpar whatever it is that you're trying to do.
Yep.
And so designers, if you're hired as the home designer and everything else, then go to it, have fun. That's great. If the architect's hired, make sure everyone understands their roles. Actually, the worst thing that I have to deal with is when the builders think they're the designer. And I love you guys, but yeah, I get we need to look at cost and things, but please don't try to design the house.
But don't you think that's why we always stress really strongly with people who are looking to build a home, and that's primarily what we're talking about, or major remodels, is hire everyone at the same time. Have everybody at the table from the beginning. We need to know the budget so that you know what to design, so that you don't create this beautiful plan that can't be afforded.
Right. So let's talk through this for 1 second. So the overall process, my personal preference, this is probably just the architect talking, I like to be hired first.
Sure.
And so that way, the reason why is I like to get into the client's head, your head, and have an understanding of who you are, what you want. And I'm essentially trying to get at what Marianne's talking about in terms of the integrity, the authenticity, and who you are as an individual and human being, what you're trying to get out of this.
Yes.
And so once I have that, then I can begin to say, okay, this builder and this designer, like one of these 3 people, one of these 3 builders, one of these 3 designers actually will be really good for you. And so I like to get them through schematic design first, and so we have a general kind of concept idea.
Yes.
And I have an idea. I've done some sketches, we've done some floor plan layouts, general massing structures, and studies, and we understand what views we're looking at, how it fits in the neighborhood or whatever we're doing, and then I have a good idea to be able to direct them. And
general massing is great, but when the client says, "Here's my plans," and I look at them and I'm like, "Oh shoot, I wish you'd call me a little bit earlier because I'm just seeing," and it's usually not much, but it's like, "Oh, you had told me you wanted this," and if we're going to do this with furniture or whatever,
Yeah, it doesn't work.
it doesn't work. Or like you said that you
Yeah.
want a lot of storage in your pantry, and I think that they made you a pantry, but they didn't understand the kind of storage that you're talking about or whatever.
Yeah.
Like everyone's speaking that different language,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so yes, get the general down. I love when people come to me like, here's the land and here's the general idea, and I have a budget in mind, and then you hire me.
Yeah.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
But when it's totally done, it's tricky.
It is tricky. Yeah, we've given you a canvas with very tight constraints.
Yeah. Which
Yeah.
is, again,
Yeah, I get it.
I can still do that.
I get it.
I just would like to, because I just think the best work is a collaborative. I just think it's
No, it is.
a collaboration
Yeah.
on some level where everyone
Yeah.
understands. And like you said, there's some gray area where builder and architect overlap. There's gray area where the designer and the architect overlap, and where the builder and designer and what, that gray area, that's where the genius is though. That's where I think we go, because it gets hard and it's like, okay, what are we going to do here? The designer wants this, the homeowner wants this, and then we figure it out and then we're like, that was amazing.
Yeah, and everyone's voice needs to be heard. It is interesting because oftentimes what I find is someone will suggest a thing, but I've been the only one who says, hey, this is how it's going to affect the outside look of it, and everyone's like, oh, well, we can't do that thing.
And we need you watching for that. You need me watching for
the furniture's not
the way that's flowing.
This isn't
and doing that.
Yeah.
And then we need the builder watching how it's actually going to come together in the budget.
Yeah.
It's perfect. It's
such
a great marriage.
No, it is a great marriage. So I guess in summary to all of this, for all of you who are watching and or wanting to build a house,
Clayton and I are getting married. That's the issue.
find the right team. Find the right team is it's sooner in the process than later, and have an understanding that everyone is worth the price you pay for them, because they're bringing a particular skill set that will generate for you exactly what you want. And understand that during this process there's always compromises, and during the design process there's always going to be compromises, and you cannot do this without one of those pieces.
Right.
Otherwise it's going to be less than what it could be.
Yeah.
And just finding the right team. So anyway, Marianne, thank you for doing this in your own house. This is fabulous. And
I love it. Thank you for working with me on it.
You're welcome. Hopefully we'll do this again.
Oh yeah, we will.
See ya.